Hey, greetings one and all. Chris Quirty. How you doing? It's Monday morning. There is snow in the vicinity. It must be October. I can't make heads or tails of this. Am I ready for this weather? I don't know. Um, Midst of a pandemic, I hope you are doing well. Just waiting on YouTube to catch up here. Let us know that it is happening. It is happening. It is happening, and I'll see it. It is nice. Got a lot of people in here today, which is great. I'm super excited to get this going. I'm going to just reorder my screens here a little bit before we get out of the gate here this morning. We've got a number of people to chat with. We're going to chat with a few people today. Bren's in, Abby's in, Eddie's in, Luigi's in, everybody's in. I'm happy about that. One thing I am doing, I'm working on some stuff for presentations, and a brand new platform officially came out of beta this morning called Pitch. And it's just like the timing is just uncanny because I'm just now working on a new exercise for presentations, and it just blows me away kind of sometimes how life will align. There was a period of time like right before I released the UI material, and I was sitting there, I was getting ready to release the UI material. I'm like, well, gosh, I guess I'll have all these individual links to all the stuff. And I'll have to keep like a spreadsheet so I can get the links out to people for these Figma files. And then Figma released the community, and I'm like, oh, well, that was great timing because that would have been nasty. And now we have the resources that are on Figma. We just released a new one on Sunday, so now we've got Pitch, and I'm really excited to see what we can do with Pitch. I also, I build a lot of presentations just straight up in Figma, but maybe that's not a great idea. The reason a lot of people ask me, why do you build presentations in Figma? It's because Google is just, it's not great. Yeah, it's okay, it's fine, but it's not great. But what's wrong with Figma? Well, Figma's not really built for presentations. There's some like fundamentals of Figma that just aren't. Master slides, for instance, or main slides. I should say main slides. We got to work that like master word out of tech. It's just kind of littered about. I did notice in working with Luigi on new GitHub work last week, I noticed that they had made it to where all the branches that Git is using, you switch from a master branch to a main branch. I thought that was really good. And I know Figma made that change quite a while back. Figma and who else was? Sketch and Adobe all at the same time made that switch. So kind of that was kind of like a coalition move. And that's really what you need. You need competitors banding together saying we're just not going to use that word anymore. So that's really cool. Hey, guess what? Looks like CouchBot fired. So why don't we just get this thing out of the gate? We got a lot of stuff to cover. Greetings, one and all. Chris Courtney here, new Pragmatic. Why are my headphones on? I don't need no stinking headphones. I'm talking to you. We're live streaming. Greetings, one and all. Chris Courtney here, new Pragmatic. Time for the feedback loop. We've got a full slate this morning. A quad is that means 4. Yeah, so the quad is back. Not squad, the quad. Different 4 though. Eddie's here, Luigi's here, Bren's here, Abby's here. Super excited to dive in. A lot of people are moving in very different directions now. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and let's get this underway. All right, so that's Abby's color for navigation. We'll come back to that. Priority guides. Here's Luigi's portfolio, and then Bren's over here in hierarchy. So let's just take a spin through the Figma stuff for a second. So Abby, you are looking at visuals to include with your guides. So let's see here. Getting started. No more tracking down files and assignments on multiple platforms. We got it all here for you. Join today and set up your profile. Floating screens showing certain tools design. Okay, so this is. I'm sorry. I see a bunch of screens here. So maybe it's that part. Design a generic homepage once product is logged in. So you're kind of saying, okay, whatever this design, we'll probably replace it with something here. And this is basically saying I'm going to give you a peek at the thing here. Okay, so you have pictogram representing each tool. Maybe view like above illustration for when we break down each tool description. So maybe it's attendance, and maybe there's icons with each of these. Maybe that's what you're meaning. This also seems like it's very like this is teacher and this is student, which is helpful to know. And then down here it's like just a wrap up like learning and interface. And basically, this is kind of what we're looking for. We're kind of trying to get a sense of, okay, so as you're putting this together, what's the general sense of what you would use here? Can you switch these visuals out? Absolutely. I'm looking for a place to start, not where you're necessarily going to finish. Okay, you may get all this stuff into the design and go, yeah, I'm just not feeling it. No, that's okay. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to come in and say, okay, what are we going after? Oh, you're going after this sort of thing. Okay, well, I think and it allows you to collaborate with people faster when you've kind of visualized your thoughts rather than keeping them all up in your noggin. So these are good. This is what I'm looking for to kind of move the ball forward. And yeah, from here, I would say that this is pretty much done. Your priority guides, you've got content, you've got visuals associated with the content. And the great thing to realize here is you're not far away from a mobile version of this thing. You need like some navigation, some buttons, some typographical hierarchy, but the content is all here. So getting it together into some initial form wouldn't be a huge leap. Okay, and that's typically what I would expect when you have all your content together. When you don't have your content together, it's like it's really a huge lift. And the whole point of this is trying to break this down into disparate parts so that it's easier to put together later. Okay, color for navigation. Let's jump in here. So this is what's the color that's being utilized to trigger like where somebody's supposed to go through these designs. And as we look over here in color scheme 1, it does definitely have this baby blue as the dominant. The action color here is really the dark blue, which you picked up on. You can see it's used a couple of times over for the buttons. It's also used for like a lot of the dark typography. I do see this as analogous, much like you have. The majority of the scheme is blue, but there are some greens and there are some yellow. So I mean, yellow and blue make green. So it's kind of like it's moving in that area. And when we talk about movement of color, it's helpful to understand the color wheel, because triadic is where we would be moving in thirds across the wheel, complementary across, monochromatic just in one lane. This is very much analogous. Very good work there. This is complementary, and it's interesting because it's definitely muted. Okay, um, this is more of a taupe, not it's not really a yellow. You do have the red tones and the light reds and the light greens. It's it's a very interesting palette. Um, Overall, what is action here? It's hard to say what action is. They call attention to the 16 cities, 16 itineraries, 4,800 locations, and I can see like the drop down has a little touch of red. I'm guessing each of these is selectable, but the action here is difficult to see. The goal of this is not to put in front of you specific like great examples. The goal is to put in front of you examples and see if you can pick them apart. Brand new. This is probably one of my least favorite designs, even though it's a design blog. It's like, what the hell? You're right. It goes all over the place. The colors almost are holding together. These sections like reviewed, noted, linked. And then there's this vast other down here. I'm not a huge fan of this, and I've thought before about ripping it out. But you were able to pick up colors used for specific categories and section. Lots of colors. How could the use of the color design be more effective? Looking all around in colors, thinking that I need to see all of them also. Why is green in the footer? You've got the right questions about this one, like why. This could be such a great site. It's a great content. Why is it so disjointed? This this site, I think it's caffeine. I keep wanting to call it coffee. Caffeine is very much like Dorsia, except I think it does a lot better job like identifying like where the action is. Like the action's like clearly I click right there. That start my application. Some of it is the words, but the green is used so consistently throughout until you get right here. And I'm not really sure why they didn't just reverse that out and make it white on that background or use a different background there. But it's very interesting that overall, like you can see, like the underline for the active state is that the green. I mean, it's the dominant color. And I do consider this to be a bit more. I mean, it depends on what you really see this as. If it's a dark blue, then it's analogous because it's moving green to blue. But I see it as a black, so I really saw this as more monochromatic, because there's all these little shades of green in here. But this is one of my favorite designs overall of this group at least. And then there was the augmented, what is it, generated photos. This is a really interesting site. I try to sprinkle stuff in here that is going to call attention to itself, because this is a site where none of these photos are real. They're just people that were generated by artificial intelligence, which means these are all royalty-free images because none of the people are really there. You're going to see more of this, a lot more of this. Photos of people cheering from the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower itself will be real, but all the people will be fake. This is not a deep fake. This is just a way to avoid having to pay a royalty fee. Now, or the royalty is on the models themselves. Photographers, still, no question they deserve to be paid for their work, but I'm saying that a lot of the reason why these AI photos are coming up is because you don't have to get sign off from the model to do it if they're not really if they're not real. It does go a bit all over the place with the skittles of color, But the main color here is this blue. It's as you go through, you'll see the blue used here and here and here. That's the action color. That's the color that we're drawn to. And also pay attention. Like this is this is the main and this is the secondary. There are two buttons here. They're presented the same size, but one it's very clear where we're wanting somebody to go versus the secondary option that is also there. It's just something I want you to think about as you're moving as you're moving forward. Same thing here. We've got sign in, same size, same presentation, same lowercase, but these three buttons are presented slightly different from one another, and understanding why would you have this in white? I could also see this in an outline. Okay, well, when you think about the hierarchy here between the buttons, it's clear, like that's first, that's second, that's third. So it's almost like they have a triad of hierarchy here, just in three buttons that are exactly the same size through the usage of color. All right. So pretty good work here overall. I like, part of this is going through and can you just pick apart, can you identify what you're seeing, and you've done a very good job there. The apply constraints exercise. All right, so you were provided a palette, and when this was initially delivered to you, there was no colors. You have gone through. I like how you've used color on the tabs. It tells me that there's probably, if I click on food, I'm guessing that everything that's tagged food is going to have this purple. If I click on environment, everything that's tagged environment will have the green. It makes sense that you would use green with the environment. I'm not sure. The question here that I have to ask is before I get too far with that idea is like, okay, well, how many different categories do I have, and do I have enough colors for those? That isn't what the exercise is presented, but I do want you thinking about, because if you had like 7 categories, what I might actually do is I might just color all of them the green or the purple or whatever, and just make a color for content. But I do like the fact that you have gone through, and what's interesting is like Explore is this green, and the notifications are, I'm guessing, active because they're green, and this $100 designation is green, but this is also green, telling you that, hey, I'm on this particular page. The question I have there is, should these be green? Because yes, Explore, that's green because it's in the nav, and everything else here is the other color, meaning that I'm guessing that, again, I'm guessing based on the icon that I'm on the Explore tab. The only question I had here is, should these be green as well? Over here, I definitely prefer the, this is the dark mode. I definitely prefer the usage of white for the cards here. I think it's just a little easier. When you have outlines, it's adding a lot of lines to the overall design. And, I just don't think this design is as strong. I could even go so far as saying, well, what about the background here? Do we really need that stroke? Could we come in and, utilize a... I'm trying to get to the search bar. Come on. Yeah, there's a search field. Could I utilize some sort of gray? Could I use the dark? Like, is there something else I could be doing there to allow this to stand out? Obviously, you could do white. I think white is a lot, so I might actually go with like dark inside of the dark mode to indicate a different direction you could go. Either way, though, I do think this first option that you have, I'm going to just kind of undo that. I think the first option that you have over here is better than the second. And the third isn't a bad idea. It's just kind of underline. You just kind of change the design from a traditional card over here to something that is underlined, and I think that's fine. The trouble I have there is like this becomes outlined, um, where I do think that this is kind of interesting. The only thing that's unfortunate about this is like the writer and the days ago kind of gets separated from the content. But overall, this works better than that. This works better than that. But what I do, and I've still got the same questions. Like should these be basically unless I get a notification, should that be like gray? Something to think about. Is it active? All right. This is not a question that I expect you to have an answer for at this stage in the game, because we haven't talked about states yet. That's upcoming. But what I want you to do is I want you to be thinking about when do I use color, and that's something that when presented with that question, I think you would have the answer for that. But you weren't presented with that question here. So I think this is very good though. Otherwise, particularly over here on dark mode, and same thing here. I thought you did a really good job. I do like the subtleness of that gray by comparison with the outline though. All right, so Bren's back, and horizontal focus, vertical focus. I am interested to see you. These. It's funny because you stayed to the grid here. Like why so scared of the grid here? You could pull that together. You could pull this over. Now, the interesting thing about a grid, and I haven't been through grids yet, so I realize the interesting thing about a grid is a lot of times people struggle to figure out, okay, so how do I align with this grid? How do I get this thing to happen? And one of the things you'll notice is right now there's 2 columns here, there's 1 column here, there's 1 column here. The spacing's just off. And that's why a lot of people they do this. Okay? And then they're like, it's very tight. I don't want it to be that tight. But you can't move this over, because then you get the weird spacing, right? This is where you think about things that are divisible by 12. All right, things that are divisible by 12. 6 gives you 2 columns. 4 gives you 3 columns. 3 gives you 4 columns. 2 gives you 6 columns. You get the idea. For me, I always come back and I say, okay, well, if I want to have a column in the middle, that's fine. I have to take that space out of probably the largest of the images, unless I'm going to get into a situation where I'm going to take these down significantly, which I don't necessarily like. Also, I would say that it's not uncommon for people to have these interior spaces inside of a grid. Like that all aligns up. It aligns with the outside, but it allows this to act as a unit in and of itself. And then if I wanted to put that unit there, that's fine. If I wanted to put that unit there, that's fine. Because there could be other things on the screen here. Yeah, like this. You asked the question before. What if I had a bunch of text and that text wanted to be right there? Well, that's on the grid. That's fine. Now, in many ways, I might want to do that, and this is really utilizing independent space, but it's still assigned to the grid as a unit here. What I don't want to get into is I don't want to get into something that's like this, where it's just like the grid's not even there. All right. So let me undo all that, because that was a bunch of futzing. 'Futzing. 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 ' but I do want to encourage you to get comfortable with the grid being there and taking advantage of it, because like it's there for you. Same thing here. Like, it's just so close. Get it on the grid, and then you're like, okay, well, Chris, I want it to be, yeah. Let's take it down in size. Just buy yourself that space. Also, the crop on this one is, this is where come in and just, getting it actually in that frame is going to be key. When you and again, right back here, like, look at that. You follow the grid, and these are all horizontal bridges. Works great. But I look at this crop and I go, man, look at all this space here. And I mean, I like having the blue, but the central focus of this is the bridge. And if I really liked having the blue, I gotta get my tools back. If I really liked having this blue, I could always just take a little bit of water out. Just something to think about. That's a cool bridge, by the way. That's heading over to Bandras. This is in Mumbai. I do also like the kind of squirrely, the bridge is starting here and it's coming up and then it's coming back down, and yeah, something cool about that. I do not know where this one is though. It's a neat bridge. It's like a pedestrian bridge though. But again, I don't know where it is. Although I see a reflection that says something there. I don't know where it is. But did you meet the requirements? Yeah, you met the requirements. Is it? But I would like to see it tighter to the grid. You're learning about grids though. Okay, strategic usage of space. So here we've got you in, and you're working with the typography and grids and space. The one thing I will say is that when you're working with space, how you organize things matters. And here you are, you've got these elements. Right now there's like equal spacing between these. Don't really feel like a unit yet. Okay? And you've got this get it in there, and then there you go. All right, so now this feels more like a unit. You can move it up. Also, like when you're doing this, what I bet you're going to find is that this photo of the person, it's helpful to have it to be a little deeper, so you can kind of see, like, they're at a desk. That's again where the crop would come in. You kind of pull that up. That tells you a little bit more about what's happening. That has nothing to do with space. And then you can come back to this secondary group, and notice, like, you pull that in, like, it's on the grid. Oh, pull that in. It's on the grid. And do I need to pull this in for it to be on the grid? Not really, because it's like it's going edge to edge. Oh, look at that. Now it's, and that all fits in there. Well, now I can bring that up if I wanted to. I could tighten this up too. Anyway, what I really like about this spacing is basically it creates a unit out of this information, and then allows this to get right above that little bottom of the window, so you know that there's more below. But this isn't very far off from where you were just a second ago. It's just mainly the utilizing the width allows that typography to go to one line. But again, if I copy, undo, and let's just look at the tweak. So that's where you were. Not sure why the image went away. Oh, it's because the image. Okay, so here's something really, really important to realize, Bren. Like right now, because of the way this is structured, this isn't really on that page. It's kind of floating above. So you've got this emphasis top. You want to like drag it, and you'll see it when it crops off like that. That means that it's associated with the page. You can also see that it's nested here. And it's in there. All right, but if I copy that over, yeah, you can see how much bigger it could be. Crop matters. Crop matters. But again, the big thing here that I want you to realize is for this to feel like a unit of space, and even at 2 lines, just tighten those things up, okay? Let's come over here and take a look. So this is emphasis left. So what I love about this is she is hanging out looking over to the left. So the content's here. And this is following the Z pattern, like, okay, here, go across, back down, right over, all works, okay? This, again, you can bet on crop. I'm going to come in here and go, oh, yeah, man, this could be so much more impactful. That's a way better crop. Way better crop. Can the photo get bigger? Well, yeah, sure, why not? You know, you could come all the way over if you wanted it to. And then you could come back over here and say, okay, well, now I'll bump this down, and you know, that's just a slightly better version of what you had. But it almost always comes down to the crop. You know, let's see here. Yeah, that one stayed in, so that's good. Let's undo the work that I just did and just take a look for comparison's sake. Like, there's the photo. Paste it in. Yeah, there's before, there's after. Okay? It's just the crop. It's just the crop bringing her into the foreground. Spacing wise, yeah, you nailed it. I mean, like, emphasis left. That's where it's supposed to go. That creates the pattern. But could it be better? Yeah, typically with the crop. Okay? Now this is interesting. So emphasis left 2, you've kind of taken this and put the photo, you've put everything in the photo together, and that's not a bad plan. I do wonder about this. Like, it's almost like, oh, I've got to have more content. When the answer, I believe, is simply right here. Oh, so there's a fade on this. Okay, well, I'll show you how to do that. So there's this image, right? And let's just make it bigger. And now let's crop it. We keep coming back to this crop thing. Okay, so now we've got, you know, for me, it's all about, can I get this in there? So here, I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, I also want like this to line up. I want it to feel like it's on the grid. But I want to follow you on that. I want to follow you on this background idea. All right. So you had this idea like, okay, well, I want to put like a fade on this thing. You can actually put that right on the image. You just click plus, and that puts this linear. Like right now, it's a gradient from white to transparent. But you can come in and move this around. The question is, how dark does this really need to be? You know, that part I don't necessarily know. But you could do something like that if you wanted to. You could also come in here on this linear and multiply it down. And when you multiply it down, that basically says, hey, I can see through this a bit, and I think that part needs to be there, but does it have to start off as pure black? I don't know. And you can drag that off the side. You can still have this be really intense, but you still pick up, you still pick up a bit more back here. It's not quite as, and then you could, if you needed to, you could knock this 2 down. You could say freedom to work from anywhere. You could also say freedom to work from anywhere. And just move that down if you want it to. It's the same idea as where you were going, but the thing I want to encourage you to do is think about like pixels. Like do I have to crop? Is there something requiring me to crop it this tight? Don't get freaked out about these little dashed lines. Okay, that's just indicating like where is the break for the monitor? Like when what I really want is I want to see that there's something down there. There's something to get me to scroll further. But I don't really care. I don't really care if I see all of this. The goal is not to fit all of this into the screen. Okay, and this will lead for you. This leads into a discussion about grids. Alignment. It all really matters. Okay, so that's Abby. That's Bren. I wanted to take a second. Actually, where is Luigi? Okay, so Luigi. Yes, Luigi. Luigi has thrown a. He is working on a new version of his prototype, or not prototype, his portfolio. And one of the things that I asked Luigi to do is to come through and kind of figure out, okay, so if we were doing this, what should we do for the navigation? Like, what's the navigation going to be like? And part of what I'm looking forward to doing with Luigi is workshopping exactly how to build this. Because there's a lot of lessons that we can learn along the way about code if we have targets. And one of the first things I want to do is, we want to basically build this navigation. And the interesting thing that I want to pay close attention to is you have a grid, okay? And that grid is applying a constraint that says I want content to hold to this width, all right? Trying to look and see. Now, it doesn't look like that content is changing colors at all. Like this is like F9, F9, F5. I'm not sure if the frame is, yeah, okay, so it's just got a slight little tinge of gray in it. Not a big deal. But there's the page itself, and the page itself is going wider, and then inside of that page, and I'm gonna put this on multiply. Inside of that page, there is this container, and that container says I want content to fit within this width, and then inside of that container, there are 3 little units of content. And I'm not here to get into a discussion about whether or not I think this is the right content to surface. That is a discussion for another time. What I'm really here to look at is how we can build this so that how can we build this so that Luigi has the space, he has the tools necessary for this to work. And I'm going to come over to CodePen, and instead of focusing on this content, I just want to kind of focus on shapes, because you can put anything into the shapes. But let's take a trip over here to CodePen. I'm going to create a new pen. So we'll say new pen, and I'm going to call this nav. And inside of this nav, I'm going to have something called a contain. I'm going to have a div class equals contain. And inside of contain, I will have series of items. One of those is going to be I'll just make this like an H3. I'll just call this one name, and then I'm going to have an unordered list. And this unordered list is going to basically hold the items, and there'll be LIs here, LI topic 1, and the LIs I'm just going to copy paste. They will link to something eventually, but these are the 3 little things he had in the middle, and then I'm also going to put a well, it's interesting. I could package it together, but I want to design it the way you've got it. So I'm going to do this as just a p tag, and I'll say email address. So I think that's what I remembered it being. Okay, so here's the items that are going to be in this navigation. Don't need any JavaScript for this. The first thing that I want to do is I want to acknowledge that contain. Well, first of all, the nav has a width 100%, and I'm going to give that a background color so that we can see it. And I'm just going to call it DA, and that's going to go all the way across. All right, so like it's just going the full width. But contain doesn't want to be that wide. Okay, contain. There's a couple of ways we could look at this. We could say, okay, well, the width of contain is going to be 1,000 pixels, and just so we can see it, I'm going to put a background color on contain that is AAA. Okay. Now, what you'll notice is like there's this little sliver of gray over here. Well, it's because I said contain is 1,000. If I said 600, that sliver of gray is going to be significantly wider. Okay. The other thing that I know about contain is I want it to float in the middle, so I'm going to say margin 0 auto. Margin 0 auto is just saying I've got no margin to the top and bottom. Just calculate how far away from the sides I need to be for this to be centered. Okay, so that is margin 0 auto. Another way you could do this would just to be say, okay, well, I'm not going to have any margin What I will have is, and I'm not going to have any width either. What I'm going to have is I'm going to have padding. I will say the padding is 0, 10%. And what that does is it basically says from the edges, just push me in 10%. I could also switch this to margin. And the difference here is margin is saying I'm not associated with the shape that's I'm inside of, which is the nav. Will push me away from the edge. And notice that now we see the color of the nav, where previously we saw the color of this container. That's because padding and margin do different jobs. Padding says the box is the full width and push the content inside. Margin says the box is the smaller width and push the other content away. So just know that padding is pushing things inside of an existing box. Margin is pushing things away from the box. I'm using margin here, and keep in mind this is the exact same thing as saying margin 0 auto. Only with 0 auto, we also require a designation for width, because without a width, 0 auto has nothing to push against. Okay, but if I say 0, 10%, basically it's saying, okay, whatever size this box is, push me away 10% from the edge of it each side. So it is taking its size from right there, and the width is, of course, 100%. The other thing that's interesting here is you probably see, like, this isn't going really edge to edge. And that's because every browser has these presets that come and alter how things are rendered, how boxes are rendered, how shapes are rendered, how typography looks. This is where we want to come in and add a reset. And they give you a couple of these inside of CodePen. I'll show you how to pull one into your project later. But for right now, just know that for CodePen, if I want to just reset it, I come in here, hit reset, save and close, and notice what happens. Like, I've lost all my styling here on the typography, so it like rips that apart. But I've also lost that weirdness to the edges here, which is really important. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I could put this on contain, but what I really want to do is I want to have a div that is focused on just the content itself. So I'll say div class equals nav content. Now, nav content, the reason why I've done this is I will probably want to use a style like contain throughout my site, and I don't necessarily want everything that I'm about to do to be associated with this, although we'll keep it simple for right now. I could write this a few different ways. By the way, this movement here where I'm just moving everything in, I'm wanting to make sure I realize what is nested inside of this. So if I close that, it closes everything down. If I reopen it, I just want to know that this H3 through the P tag are part of nav content. So I'm using command close bracket to move it over, and I can use command open bracket to move it over the other way. But this just allows me to see the nesting a little easier, much like I've done here with the UL. These LIs are nested inside of the UL, and that is a very common paradigm. Most tags that you'll utilize in HTML or CSS are tags where items are nested inside of opening and closing tags. There are a few instances where that isn't the case, but in most cases that is what's happening. So we've got this nav content, and so nav content dot nav content is where I want to add a property. And with the CSS that I'm writing in here, background color is a property, margin is a property. The property I'm going to write now is for Flexbox. So display flex. And what display flex is doing is essentially saying, all right, and I'm going to note this out really fast. Right now, these are all stacked. But the moment I say flex, hit save real fast. The moment that I ask this to flex, these move side to side. And the idea here is that name is its own unit for the Flexbox. Topic, these ULs, this UL series of list items, that's its own unit, and then email address. These are now moving side to side. If I said row orientation column, oh, I'm sorry. Is it row orientation or just flex? Oh, it's flex direction. Flex direction column gets it back to that, but by default, when you call the Flexbox, it moves it horizontally. The other thing that's interesting here is we could put a designation on this called justify content space between, and that tells this unit, hey, whatever space you've got here, I want you to separate it out, because I don't want these things all in the same place. Notice that the depth of this, we've never set a depth on the nav bar, and we could sit here and say height. Height is 300 pixels. That would set the nav bar very deep. I don't typically do that. I don't like to set a height on things if I can help it, because I want the content to drive what's happening. Many times, what I see happen when you set a height is that's when your design starts breaking. If it's used improperly, that's one of the easiest ways that you can break a design is to constrain the height. Go with content, and now that we've got this kind of set up, I want to target a few things. So I'm going to say nav content UL. So that I'm not putting a class on this, because this is the only unordered list that's in this nav bar. So I'm just going to target that UL. I could also just as easily target it just by saying nav, or actually nav UL. But in this case, I'm just saying nav content UL. This is where I want to. Well, it's kind of funny. It's already gotten rid of that, so I don't have to put text decoration none. But I am going to say float left. Actually, that would be on the LIs. So when I said float left, basically what that was saying is, instead of you guys being stacked, I want you to be side to side. It's very similar to what I was doing with Flex, although this is a different property altogether. Now I want to adjust the spacing of those items. And the other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to say nav content UL. Well, I'm just going to hold that one there. There's nothing I want to do with that yet. So nav content li float left. We're going to say padding, and the padding on this, it's going to make the nav. This is going to drive the nav bar up in size. Okay, so the padding is going to be, let's say 20 pixels to the top and bottom. And what I've done here is I've set padding to 20 pixels all the way around. If I wanted to just be top and bottom, I could put a 0 there. It would draw them back together. But here, I want them to actually be just a little bit apart. So now we have this padding, 20 pixels to the top. If I said it was 80, I can make that nav bar really big. If I said it was 50, you get the idea. The interesting thing here is the overall depth of the nav bar is 50 plus whatever the size of this is plus 50. So it's probably like 116, okay, in size. Either way, I'm gonna say it's 30, and I'll say it's 20. So it doesn't need to be that deep, right? So that gives you a depth here for the nav. We could also come through and set a style that begins to address the hover. So it begins to drive a little interaction here. So if we said hover and we said background color green, when we hover over these items, the color that is selectable, the color of the item related to the size of this padding area, you'll see it change the green. So now if we come through, now we've got just a smidge of interactivity here. You don't have to actually do that. You could say border bottom 10 pixels solid green. You could do that instead. And the thing I don't obviously like about that is you see what happens when I put border bottom on here. It makes the entire nav bar jump. If I wanted that to actually be a thing, what I'd probably do is I'd probably make it a little more subtle, and then I would put it on the actual LI, but I would just say solid color, and then whatever the, so I think this was AAA. And now it appears without making everything jump up and down. Okay? So next bit here, and let's contain alright, so now you get the sense I don't actually need this let's make it DA. So there's a bit of navigation going on there, or a bit of interactivity going on there. Let's see, I want to come back over and look at this. You had work, about, and resume. This is work, about, resume. So something interesting is happening here, and it is this. This is not centered. You can really tell right here. This is more to the left than to the right, and a lot of this is related to the fact that this content down here. So let's. I can't grab that because I don't have that font installed, but the email address and the name do not have a consistent width, and the email address is taking up more space than the name right now. So if I really wanted to make this work for me in a fashion that was going to function, what I would probably do is I would probably come in here and say, okay, well, there's a couple things I want to do right away, actually. So I want to come in here and say nav content h3. I'm going to pull this nav content h3, nav content p, and nav content li. Notice that I'm targeting each of these, but now I'm basically just kind of getting them all set up to where they line up. I'm targeting each of these, but I'm using a comma to separate out exactly what I'm targeting each time. Also, I'm going to set this to 0 because I don't want there to be any padding to the left or right for name and email. And then I'm going to overwrite that with the padding here that, this is still 20, but it's also 10. And that's for this middle section. So now that we've done that, I want to set a width. I want to set a specific width for the P tag and the H3. And I'm going to say, hey folks, your width is 100 pixels. Yeah, I'll say 300 pixels. 200 pixels? All right. So essentially what that's done is that's now ended up putting this work about resume directly in the middle as you have it designed here. Okay. But we've got to do something here with this email address, because now the email address is not, it's like way to the inside, right? And do I need it to be 200 pixels? Probably not. If I said 100 pixels, this still works. But with regard to this email address, it's still not aligned the direction that I want it to be. So if I said text align right, now that moved, but so did that. And it's because I've called both of these at the same time. So this is where I need to call just nav p content, or nav content p. And now these are aligned. So this is, because I've set a width on each of these, and I've said, okay, now your text align on this email address is right. This email address could get longer. And you see it wrapped. Well, why did it wrap? Well, it's because the content width is constrained. But regardless of how long this gets, this information remains in the center, which is the goal of your initial design over here. Now, you could also come through and you have this LI, you have this all caps. What I would do is I would say text transform uppercase. And that gives you the text uppercase. Now, obviously, I have not begun to address some of the other questions that we have here. Mainly because I don't have that font available to me. Maybe the next time through we'll pull that typography in. But for today, what I was really wanting to do is kind of walk through, how would we build this in such a way that is responsive. Like you can get down to here and things start to break apart, and we can look at that when we get into media queries. But the big question I had was, how do we quickly build this nav, have these units in here, and begin targeting them with CSS to address one of the gnarly issues that's always going to come up, which is, how do you handle this and make sure that it's centered, even though you have two variable length items on either side. And the answer to that is, well, the items that are variable length on either side need to be set to a consistent width so that this is always in the center. If that's the case, then it just becomes an issue of managing those items with your media queries. The other thing I want to do here is I want to come through and just declare on the root, and this is a pseudo element that's basically, hey, for all the HTML, I want to set the font size. Sorry. Font size 10 pixels. That's going to shrink everything down. But that now allows me to come through and begin using rims. So if I said, you know, on the P, well, could set it on all of them actually. So font size 1.4 rim. That's saying everything is 14. Font says 18. That's saying everything is 18. I'm kind of big on the 8 pixel grid, so 8, 16, 24, 32. So I'm going to set it to 16 here. You can obviously make adjustments as you like, but that's where we're going to save it here. So I'm going to like save this as Luigi nav. I will drop this in, and I'll challenge Luigi to adjust this design and ship it back to me. I'll put that in your notes though. Okay. All right. So gotta save that. Okay, and otherwise, I think that's pretty much it for today's edition of the Feedback Loop. Always like nerding out and looking at a little code. You know, if you followed the early feedback loops with Rebecca or Tejal or anybody else who's gone through and coded up their portfolio, you'll know that I can nerd out on code a bit. It's front end stuff's fun. Front end stuff's just, it's playtime. All right, Luigi, thanks for sending that over. I hope that walkthrough today of how to structure that with a container and how these things nest inside of one another to hold themselves together was helpful. Bren, good work, could be great work. It all comes down to the right crop. Abby, solid work on the color usage. Good to see you pushing through priority guides. Can't wait to see you in microcopy now. And then Eddie, you know, you're submitting stuff for design ethics right now. And the real trick I always talk to people about design ethics is it's not about staying in your lane, but it's about realizing what can I impact from where I'm setting at. I can do something more than shout at the bosses over in the corner. I can do something more than grouse about what we should be doing. There's always something I can do to help move the ball forward. What is that thing? You had a pretty good idea. The idea that about taking photography in leveraging photography to make the sites better. That's really smart. Airbnb did that forever with their super users. I'm not sure if they do it anymore, but when they got started, they discovered that if they wanted to raise the prices of units that are being rented, the best way to do it was to have better photography. So that's a good plan. It's not directly addressable by you because you can't go take photos of all the restaurants, but there is something that you can do, and I'll leave some notes in your document or in your journal. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Chris Courtney. This has been the Feedback Loop, and I will chat with some of you today and all of you tomorrow. Take care.